Hey everybody, this is Frenzy Rumble with a quick video tutorial of how to wire a small 5mm or 3mm or even a 1mm LED light to your customs. It's a very simple process. This here is a diagram. Let's zoom out. This is the basic principle that we're going to be following here. So we've got a switch, a power source, which is a battery. We're going to be using a small watch battery like one of these, and then your LED light. So basically what a switch does, here's an example of a real switch. It's got 3 pins on the back typically, and when you have the switch button, which would sit in there like that, basically it swivels back and forth from off to on, off to on. So off, you could see the 2 pins are not conducting anything to the light, but when in the on position, you're actually creating a link. This is the metal. This is conduct from here to here, and it actually completes the loop, bringing power to the light and turns the light on. So it's a pretty simple process. You can, in some circumstances, add a resistor in your line, which would be in your negative line. I didn't really specify in here which would be the negative line, but a resistor kind of resists a little bit of the power from going to the light, so you could actually dim out the LED light using a resistor. That would be for another time. So basically for this tutorial, what you're going to need is solder. This is just a common solder, bought at Radio Shack. Wiring. In this case, I'm using electromagnet enamel plated wire. This is a very thin gauge, great stuff for customs because it's flexible and it's easy to work with, and it's very cheap actually. And I've got some modeling clay. And I got my LED lights, which I buy off of eBay. Usually you could buy these in packs of 30 or 50 for a couple cents a piece. For this tutorial, these are going to be blue, and they're 3mm. I've got a watch battery for testing, and I've got, in this case here, what I'm going to use is one of these. This is from a dollar store toy. It's really great because it has everything all in one. It's got the LED light, it's got the power source, and it's got the switch all built into the same circuit board. But for this example, what I did was I cut it down just a little bit. You could see I pulled out the original light and I trimmed it down a bit just for size restrictions. So that's basically the tools you're going to need. Next up is preparing your LED light. So what I'm going to do is get one of these lights out of here. I always test it just to make sure it works. So you get your battery, your watch battery, give it a quick test. Alright, so that works. Before doing anything else, you don't want to wire up something that doesn't work. You're also going to need wire cutters. I trim a little bit off of these pins just to save some space. And then what I do next is, this is a kind of cool trick, is I take my modeling clay and I jam my LED light right into it. This lets it just sit straight and solid. Doesn't move around much. When you're actually soldering, you want these pins to be as still and motionless as possible. Next up, you're going to take your solder gun and you're going to prim each one of these pins with just a touch of solder. This just gets them ready for the wires later on. So you can see now each one of those has a little bit of solder on it. And then next up, you're going to prepare your wire. Depending on how far you're going with the wire, you should always go a little bit extra. I'm going to pull off about 20 inches here. And what I do just to make sure that they're both the same length, one for the one side of the light, one for the other, is I pair up the end and I kind of meet them, and then I tie a small knot. You can do this with any wire. This is nice because it keeps the 2 wires as one. And then I twist it like this, and I go all the way down, a couple twists here and there across the wire. This is just so you have one wire running through your custom rather than 2. And then on the other end, I'm going to snip off the tip where it loops around, and that would be my other end. Now with this enamel coated wire, it's actually coated with enamel. And I'm going to take my X-Acto knife if I can find it. What you need to do is you scrape off the enamel. Just scrape it off. You want to make sure you get every single side, all the enamel. You need to be showing copper all the way across, because if there's enamel there, the power won't conduct through it. So you got to really be sure to get off all the enamel. And then I'm also going to tie a knot on this end. So you got your two here. See if that focuses. And then on the other end, you're going to scrape off the other end. Even them out with a knife. And then scrape. Next up, I'm going to power the switch and batteries. I'm going to prim them with solder. So basically you have a switch, and one of those pins in that switch goes to the negative side of this battery pack, and the other end goes to the positive side of the battery pack. You can see the solder on this end. Sometimes it's a little tricky getting a battery casing that you can't solder directly to the batteries. If you try, you'll learn the hard way that you can't. They explode. So basically this is all in one. This switch goes to these batteries, and then out here on this end I've scraped and exposed the copper. One's for positive, one's for negative. So I'm going to place this on my clay, and that kind of just holds it in place as well. And I'm going to prep each end of those exposed copper areas with some solder. So that those are soldered, that's good. You gotta be very careful with a solder gun. Don't breathe in the fumes, and don't burn yourself with it either. So we got my two wire ends here. We're gonna go back to this battery. Actually, I'm gonna do the light first. So we're just gonna solder one end first, and give it a second to dry. Then the other one. Solder dries in a matter of a second or two, so pop that out. That should be good to go. This is another stage that I actually test the light just to make sure everything is conducted well. And in this case it's not, so we'll see. And that's probably because there's a little bit of enamel showing. So I've confirmed that my battery works, and my lighting works here. My ends are connected or scraped well, so there's wire exposed. And then I'm going to wire these two ends right to here, to those two right there. So like that. It's a 50-50 shot. I'm not sure which was negative, which is positive. It really doesn't matter, just as long as it works. And then you solder to here. And that's pretty much it. So you got your working LED light, and then you got your switch right here, which turns it off, and turn it off and turn it on. That's pretty much it. And this is pretty solid here, so soldering is very tough, so you can see. And that's pretty much it. So this end is going to go into a custom's head, and then this end is going to go somewhere conspicuous on the custom itself. And then I've got enough extra wire here that I could kind of stream it through the figure and glue it into place, or whatever needs to be done. And that's pretty much it. So there you go, basic LED wiring tutorial.